women returning after causing pain. Why does this happen? What psychological undercurrents pull them back into the lives of the men they once wounded? This isn't just a matter of impulse or regret. It's a deeper, more complex interaction between human nature, power dynamics, and the way emotions evolve over time. People act out their unresolved emotional conflicts through relationships. Many women, after hurting a man, experience a delayed realization of what they have lost. In the moment, they may be acting from a place of frustration, self-righteousness, or misguided independence. They convince themselves that leaving is necessary, that their happiness lies elsewhere, that the grass is greener on the other side. And yet, time has a way of revealing hard truths. When they step away, they begin to see the man they hurt, not through the lens of conflict, but through the void his absence leaves behind. Emotions are not static, they shift and evolve. A woman might leave in a fit of anger, thinking she is justified, but once the storm settles, she is left with silence. And in that silence, she starts to compare. She measures the man she left against the world she now inhabits. In many cases, that world does not provide the validation she expected. The attention she once received so effortlessly diminishes. The new prospects she entertained fail to ignite the same depth of connection. Reality sets in. People are not as interested in her as she thought they would be, or they are interested for the wrong reasons. Suddenly, the man she left seems far more valuable than she initially believed. It is crucial to understand that human nature is fundamentally self-serving. When a woman comes back, it is rarely because of some grand epiphany about the depth of her mistake. More often than not, it is a response to her own unmet needs. She may miss the security he provided, the way he made her feel wanted, or the emotional depth he offered. She might return because she underestimated his value, and once she has seen what the world outside holds, she realizes she had something rare. There is also an element of control. Some women return not out of love or regret, but because they want to reaffirm their influence. If they sense that the man they hurt has moved on, that he is doing well without them, it triggers a response in them, a desire to reclaim what they perceive as theirs. They want to know they still have access, that they can still affect his emotions. This is why many men find themselves caught in cycles with women who leave and return repeatedly. It is a power game, a test to see if the emotional grip still exists. And then there is guilt. Guilt can be a powerful motivator. Some women return because the weight of their actions becomes too heavy to bear. They want to rewrite the story, to fix what they damaged. Not necessarily out of selflessness, but to relieve their own internal discomfort. They fear being remembered as the villain, so they attempt to smooth over the past by reinserting themselves into the man's life. But is this truly for him, or is it just another way to control the narrative? Men must be aware of this pattern. It is easy to romanticize a woman's return, to believe that time has magically transformed her perspective, that she has come to her senses. But more often than not, she is reacting to her own needs, not to some newfound appreciation for the man she left behind. This is why men who blindly accept a returning woman without scrutiny often find themselves hurt again. The cycle repeats because the fundamental issues that caused the departure were never resolved. There was no genuine growth, no real change. It is not inherently wrong for a woman to return after causing pain. People make mistakes, and growth is possible. But a man must assess her reasons with clarity. He must ask himself, has she truly changed, or is she merely seeking comfort? Is she drawn back to me as a person, or to the role I played in her life? Does she regret losing me, or does she simply dislike the consequences of her decision? The answer to these questions determines everything. Men who value themselves do not accept a woman's return at face value. They examine her actions, not just her words. They recognize patterns and assess whether the change is real or an illusion. They do not allow loneliness or nostalgia to cloud their judgment. A woman's return can feel like validation, but it should not be mistaken for proof of worth. A man's value is not measured by whether a woman comes back, but by whether he has built himself into someone so strong, so self-assured, that he does not need her to. A man must understand that his value is not defined by a woman's decision to leave or return. His worth is rooted in his character, his discipline, and his ability to navigate life with clarity and purpose. Too many men make the mistake of seeing a woman's return as a grand act of redemption, a testament to their significance. But this mindset is dangerous. It places his sense of self-worth in the hands of someone who has already demonstrated a willingness to walk away. Women return for reasons that are often more pragmatic than romantic. They come back because they miss the stability, the familiarity, or the emotional depth that was once present. They return because their external experiences have failed to provide what they expected. They come back because, whether consciously or unconsciously, they are testing the waters, probing to see if the door remains open. And if the man allows it too easily, he signals that he is still under their influence, still waiting, still available on their terms. This is where many men falter. They mistake a woman's return for proof of transformation. They assume that her absence was a period of deep introspection, that she has come back having learned from her mistakes. But the reality is that most people, unless they have actively engaged in self-improvement, do not change in a fundamental way. They return not because they are different, but because their circumstances have shifted. A woman who left in search of something better and found disappointment does not necessarily return as a wiser, more self-aware person. She often returns out of necessity, comfort, or regret, not because she has truly evolved. Men must recognize that their time, attention, and emotional investment are valuable. A woman who leaves and returns must earn her way back, not simply be accepted with open arms. This is not about punishment or resentment. It is about respect. A man who values himself does not allow someone to treat him as a temporary option. If she left because she failed to see his worth, then her return must be met with scrutiny. She must prove through consistent actions, not mere words, that she has changed, that she understands what she walked away from, and that she is willing to contribute meaningfully. Emotional resilience is crucial here. A man who is easily swayed by a woman's return is a man who lacks control over his own destiny. He must ask himself, am I accepting her back because I truly believe she has changed, or because I am afraid of being alone? Am I welcoming her because she adds value to my life, or because I am longing for the past? These questions must be answered with brutal honesty. A man who fails to interrogate his own motivations is setting himself up for a repeated cycle of pain. The dynamic of leaving and returning is deeply tied to human psychology. People are drawn to what is familiar, even when that familiarity is rooted in dysfunction. A woman may leave thinking she is breaking free, only to realize that the emotional attachment she severed was more significant than she thought. This realization does not necessarily mean she values the man she left. Rather, it means she is grappling with the loss of a connection that once defined a part of her identity. She returns not because of him, but because of what he represented. And if he is not careful, he will mistake her nostalgia for genuine affection. There is also a level of unconscious manipulation at play. Some women, whether intentionally or not, use absence as a tool to heighten their perceived value. They believe that by walking away, they create scarcity, that their return will be met with heightened appreciation. They assume that the man, having suffered in their absence, will now accept them under less favorable terms. This is why so many men find themselves in a weakened position when a woman comes back. They are so relieved by her return that they ignore the conditions under which she left. They do not hold her accountable, they do not demand change. Instead, they welcome her back as if she were a prize to be won, rather than a person whose actions require scrutiny. But a man who understands his worth does not operate this way. He does not need a woman to return to validate his significance. He does not equate her presence with his value. If she left, she left. And if she wants to come back, she must prove why she deserves a place in his life. He is not an option. He is not a fallback plan. He is not a safety net for someone who made a poor decision and now seeks comfort. This is not to say that reconciliation is always impossible. People do grow, and sometimes separation provides the necessary space for real transformation. But the key lies in the evidence of change. A woman who truly values a man will show it not through words, but through actions. She will not merely express regret, she will demonstrate a newfound understanding of what she walked away from. She will respect his boundaries, acknowledge her past mistakes, and commit to a better path forward. And a man who values himself will not accept anything less. There is a deeper lesson in all of this, one that extends beyond relationships. It is about the fundamental principle of self-respect. A man who respects himself does not allow others to dictate his worth. He does not seek validation in the return of someone who once discarded him. He builds his life in a way that is fulfilling, independent of external validation. He focuses on his goals, his growth, and his purpose. And because of this, he is never in a position where he is waiting for someone to come back. This is the difference between a man who commands respect and one who chases approval. The former understands that his time and energy are precious. The latter gives them away too easily. The former sets standards. The latter compromises them, and the world treats them accordingly. Women return after causing pain for many reasons, but rarely for the ones men hope for. They return because they feel a void, because they seek comfort, because they are testing the waters. They return because human nature is wired to seek out familiar connections, even when those connections were severed for a reason. But a man must be wise enough to recognize this pattern. He must not be seduced by nostalgia or blinded by loneliness. He must ask himself the hard questions, assess the situation with clarity, and most importantly, ensure that his life is not defined by the coming and going of another person. The measure of a man is not in whether a woman comes back. It is in whether he has built himself into someone who does not need her to. If she returns, it should be on terms that reflect his value, not as a convenience for hers. If she left, it was for a reason. And if she truly belongs in his life, she will prove it through actions, not merely through an apology wrapped in sentimentality. Self-respect is the foundation of any meaningful relationship. A man who understands this will never find himself at the mercy of a woman's indecision. He will not be a pawn in her game of regret and reconciliation. Instead, he will stand firm, knowing that his value is not something to be recognized after the fact, but something that should have been evident from the very beginning. A man who has developed himself into someone of true value does not operate from a place of scarcity. He does not believe that love is so rare that he must cling desperately to the people who once disregarded him. He does not see a woman's return as a sign of his worth, but rather as an event that must be evaluated rationally. Too many men live in a state of emotional desperation, hoping that the one who left will return so they can finally feel validated. But validation from someone who once dismissed you is a weak foundation upon which to build self-worth. True confidence is knowing that your value is independent of external approval, especially from those who have already proven they do not fully appreciate you. Women are deeply attuned to social perception. A woman who leaves and later returns is often responding to more than just private emotions. She is reacting to the way the world sees her, the way her choices have played out in the social landscape. She may have left believing that she could easily replace the man she discarded, but as time passes, reality begins to set in. She sees him growing, thriving, and improving himself. Perhaps she hears from mutual acquaintances that he is doing well without her, that he has become stronger in her absence. This is a psychological trigger. Women, like all people, are drawn to what appears valuable. If a man maintains his dignity, if he refuses to crumble under the weight of rejection, he, paradoxically, becomes more attractive in the eyes of the one who left him. This is why men must resist the urge to chase, to plead, to degrade themselves in an effort to win back someone who has already decided to walk away. The moment a man begins to beg for attention, he becomes less valuable in the eyes of the one he desires. Humans instinctively respect those who hold their ground. If a woman believes she can return at any moment, if she sees that a man is waiting for her without question, she will never fully appreciate him. People do not value what is given to them too easily. They value what is rare, what is difficult to obtain, what requires effort to earn. It is critical to recognize that a woman's return does not erase the past. Whatever caused her to leave in the first place is still embedded in the fabric of her mind. She may have second thoughts now, but those initial doubts, those initial dissatisfactions, do not disappear overnight. They linger, often beneath the surface, waiting for the next moment of doubt or frustration to reawaken them. This is why so many men, upon taking a woman back, find themselves in the same painful position months or years later. The cycle repeats itself because they never addressed the core issues. They simply took her return as proof that everything had been resolved. To prevent this, a man must establish clear expectations. If a woman who hurt him wants to return, she must demonstrate through consistent behavior, not just words, that she has truly changed. And even then, a man must ask himself if taking her back serves his best interests. Too often, men accept the return of a woman out of nostalgia, out of loneliness, or out of a misplaced sense of loyalty. But emotions are unreliable guides when making decisions that will shape the future. What matters is whether her presence in his life will elevate him or drag him back into the instability that once caused him pain. A woman's return must never be the center of a man's happiness. He must not allow his emotional state to be dictated by her presence or absence. The strongest men are those who live with purpose, whose ambitions stretch beyond romantic relationships. They do not sit by the phone, waiting for someone who walked away to suddenly see their worth. They are too busy building, growing, and advancing in life. And it is precisely this strength that often draws women back. They see a man who has not only survived their absence, but thrived in it. They realize that they were not as irreplaceable as they once believed. Some women return because they fear irrelevance. They see that a man is doing well without them, and they cannot bear the thought of being forgotten. This is an ego-driven response, not a sign of love. They do not want the man to move on completely because that would mean they no longer have a hold on him. They come back not necessarily to stay, but to reassert their influence, to remind him, and perhaps even themselves, that they still matter in his life. This is one of the most dangerous forms of return because it is not rooted in genuine affection, but in control. Men must be ruthless in guarding their emotional space. If a woman wants to come back, her return must be earned. It must be justified with real, measurable change. And even then, a man must ask himself whether allowing her back into his life is truly the right move. Many times, the better path is to walk away completely, to close the door permanently, not out of spite, but out of respect for oneself. There is no power in allowing someone to treat you as a revolving door, leaving when it suits them and returning when it is convenient. Self-respect is the highest currency a man possesses. Without it, he is at the mercy of others, forever waiting for them to dictate his value. With it, he becomes unshakable, immune to the emotional manipulations that govern so many relationships. He recognizes that his worth was never dependent on whether a woman stays or leaves. It was always there, inherent, waiting to be realized. The moment a man internalizes this truth, he becomes truly free. This freedom does not mean he is incapable of love or that he must reject all women who seek reconciliation. It means he chooses from a place of strength, not weakness. If he allows a woman back into his life, it is because he genuinely believes she has proven her value, not because he fears being alone. If he moves forward without her, it is because he understands that his life does not revolve around the decisions of others. He is the architect of his own destiny, not a passive participant in someone else's indecision. A woman's return is not an event to be celebrated blindly. It is an opportunity for assessment, for clarity, for an unwavering evaluation of whether her presence will bring stability or chaos. The wise man does not allow history to repeat itself out of sentimentality. He learns, he grows, and he chooses wisely. There is a brutal but liberating truth at the core of all this. A man who truly understands his worth does not need to ask why a woman left or why she came back. He already knows. And because he knows, he does not waste his time agonizing over the past. He builds a future so strong that it makes her departure irrelevant and her return a mere afterthought. The essence of this entire discussion boils down to one fundamental truth. A man's worth is not defined by whether a woman stays or leaves. Too many men tie their self-esteem to the presence of someone who once hurt them, believing that her return is proof of their value. But true confidence is built from within, not granted by external validation. A woman may return for many reasons: regret, loneliness, social pressure, or even a desire to reclaim lost control. But none of these should automatically grant her access back into a man's life. What matters is whether her return aligns with a man's growth, whether she has truly changed, and whether allowing her back serves his best interests. A man who respects himself, does not beg, does not chase, and does not accept someone who treats his presence as optional. He stands firm in his boundaries, knowing that his value remains unchanged regardless of who comes or goes. At the end of the day, the strongest men are those who move forward, not those who wait in the past. They build, they evolve, and they understand that their destiny is in their own hands.